Hi everyone, this is Ashish again, and today we are going to discuss about data types in Azure Bicep. And the data types in Azure Bicep, the core focus in this particular session we have is that what are the different data types that you will use in day-to-day operations when you start working with Azure Bicep. Some of the data types we have already gone through, and we already know a little bit of using them, but still we will go into the very brief overview of all these basic, or I would say most used data types in Azure Bicep, and then we'll see how and then we will go further and start using them in upcoming sessions, and we'll see how these different basic concepts work together. Myself, Ashish Raj, I'm co-founder for Azure Easy community and Azure DevOps Pro community. I'm a cloud and DevOps architect and also a Microsoft certified trainer. So if you are not connected with me, or you can visit azure-devopspro.com to know more details, what are the things we have done in past as a community. And if you have not connected, then you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and you will get the website link there. I mean the LinkedIn profile link there. Anyway, so let's go ahead and discuss about the data types. But before we discuss data types, let's go back and see what are the things that we have discussed so far. So we started with the infrastructure as code component, like what the basic concept is and how it works in the cloud ecosystem and how beneficial it is. Then we looked into the Azure Bicep, where this particular tool or technology stands in terms of infrastructure as code. What are the various benefits you have when you're using Azure Bicep for infrastructure as code? What are the different competition in terms of adoption there, for example Terraform, and how do you compare when you are deciding upon picking one of these tools? So if you need Azure Bicep, or if you need Terraform, or you need combination or whatsoever. So those things we have discussed in terms of pro and cons, and then we start looking into the tools and setup things. So what tools and what are the setup that you need on your computer in terms when you want to start working with Azure Bicep. So we looked into the Visual Studio Code setup, then we looked into the some of the resources that you will be referring mostly. So those are the things that we discussed in this session. And then in the previous session, the last session that we had in this course was looking into the Bicep file structure and understanding the component of Bicep file. So what the various component like parameter or resources and modules and all those things means, so that when you are opening a Bicep file for the first time, and if you don't know anything about Bicep, then you can still be able to understand what's happening there. Maybe you are not able to create that one, or maybe you are not really ready to start working on modifying the file, but still you will be able to make sense out of it, like what's happening there, what kind of resources are being created, what are the logics behind, logic has been written, and all those things. And then now today we are looking into the various data types that you will see in those Bicep files. Some of the data types that we will discuss today, you might see that you have already used them in some way, and you may have already a brief idea about them. But having said that, the whole agenda of this particular session is to just quickly have a glance view of those different data types, so that if you are beginner, you can at least start using them when it is about modifying. So till the last session, it was still more of reading the existing Bicep file, making some sense out of it. But now onwards, the understanding is that you'll start playing around it and then start figuring out how to use what. So if without having to say again anything else, let me close this slide and let me go to the Visual Studio and show you what's happening here. So let me okay, so these are the things we are going to discuss, but let me do one thing and delete all these things, and let me start from the beginning, and let me do this. Yeah, so what we are going to discuss about is the data types. And for data types, the first data type that we are going to talk about is string. You have already used that in some examples, but we will still see how this thing is decided. So the data types that you will use are in two ways. Either you will create a parameter or you will create a variable for a data type. Just like in any programming language, most of the programming language will have either one of them, parameter or variable, or both of them. And we will discuss about how these two things are different in terms of Azure Bicep, but that's not the agenda right now. So we will just go with any one of them. So let's go with the parameter thing, because that's the one that we have already seen it. So you can create a parameter with the name. So you can definitely name it like my string maybe. So because this is my string, so my string. And then you can define what type of data type that you are going about. So as you can see, there are different data types: array, bool, integer, object, secure string, and string. We will go through all of these in a bit. So first of all, let's go with the string. And you can define, when you are defining parameter, either you can define the value here itself, and we'll look into the details after some time, or for example, my string and the value, or you can keep it empty, and then since this is parameter, this will be asked on the runtime. So you have to provide it like a parameter file, or you have to provide it like from command line. I mean, whatever. We will discuss about how to use these parameters in parameter versus variable discussion. Now, so this is how you create a string variable, string parameter. And as you can see, strings are pretty much as you may guessed already. So you can have these string like this. So string value, my string, or the way you want to call it. In the same way, you can define a variable. So variables are just like my string var, and then you can call this like this. So you can name it like my string var. So you can define it either variable or either parameter. It entirely depends on your use case, what exactly you will need. And that's the discussion we are going to have in one of the upcoming session, which is very much dedicated for this discussion. We are making it like 30 minutes to 40 minutes thing, so that at least you grasp everything revolving around that particular discussion. And today's discussion is data type. So yes, we are not focusing on what these difference are from parameter and variable. Anyway, so this is the way you create a string, and you will see the use case here. So for example, you want to create a resource. So I'll define it like resource, my storage count. And I can have different, so this is the magic of Visual Studio Code, that is telling me what are the different resources you can create in Azure using Bicep. And here I want to create a storage account, very simple one. You can pick anything you want, but here we are picking a storage account because they are fairly simple in explaining what they do. Yeah, so that's the reason. And I'm going to do about this and then required. So yeah, so here for a storage account, whenever you create a storage account, you at least need a name which is a string type, and for that you can actually declare a string variable. So instead of this my string, I will say my storage name. So there is a parameter with the name my storage name, and here I can use that parameter over here. So this is the way, and the same thing goes for the location, SKU, and kind. Now what these different types are, you can easily go there and so for example, what exactly the things you can mention here is something that you can get if you go to this API. I mean actually the documentation of Microsoft, you will see that what are the different options you have, and what are the different additional option you have in terms of these resources. And how to make use of these resources. So there are a couple of them, and you can see this, what these different properties are and what are the different types of those properties. Accordingly, you will have to define these properties in the same data type. So you can see that there is a string, so for example, if I'll go with the name, you can see this has to be a string, this has to be a string, and so forth. So here what I will do is, let me go back to the screen. Okay, so here for location, I will again create another parameter over here. So I'll say parameter my storage location, oops, and I will say again it's a string, of course, and then here I will again refer that parameter, and same goes for SKU. So for SKU also you can define parameter my storage SKU, again string, and refer it here my storage SKU, and then the kind, again you can have a parameter for this, again my storage kind, and it's again string, and I'll say my storage kind, and this way you can use these parameters that are coming from string. Having said that, suppose you don't really want to have this value as a parameter. Instead, every time someone creates a storage, you always want to have that particular there has to be, okay, let me see, no, so okay, this one is not coming properly, so let me do this. Actually it's very, I mean, either you can go there and let me show you how to use this documentation as well. So you go there, and if you go to this, and then you will see this kind, yeah, and this kind has these different types. So this is one of them, so I'll just copy from here. I mean, the Visual Studio Code should populate, but due to some reason it's not populating at this moment. So I'll just go there and copy and paste over here, and there is some issue, and I got this why it was not populating. So by mistake, what I have done is I have deleted one of the bracket, and that's the reason it was not populating. So yes, it is also a kind of a validation that if something goes wrong, then the Visual Studio Visual Studio help will not give you all the relevant help. Okay, so here you have this storage v2, and if you want to have some kind of static values defined, so that everyone who creates a storage account has to have this storage account type based on your organization and department detail, constraint, you can have this, or you can create a parameter so that they can provide those values on the runtime if they want to. So yes, so this is the way you do the string thing. And then the next part that we are going to discuss about is the integer. So just like any other programming language, you have something called integer. Here also you have this my int, and you can call it like int, and then you can also define the value of it, or you can keep it empty, and then someone who is running it will have to provide it on CLI or in a parameter file. Or you can also create a variable, and you can call it like my int var. I mean, you have to define it in a, my int var, and then there also you have to provide a value. Now in terms of parameter and variable, if you see the notice here, let me declare some value here, so it is a default value for this. Now if you see the difference, in case of parameter, you have to define the type. I mean, you have to tell which type of parameter you are creating, but with the variable it's like dynamic, so you can define the variable and then Bicep will know what type it is. So you do not have to explicitly tell what type of variable you are creating. So this is the primary difference. Otherwise, any data type can be created either parameter or variable. Just the way of declaring them and using them will be different, and then again their use case are also different. As I said, we will discuss about it later. When you know why parameter and why variable, why we have both of them. They look similar, but why we have both of them. Anyway, so integer use case I don't see really. I mean, with the storage account, having said that, you can I mean, there are certain resources where you have to define some values in integer, and if you want to have this in a variable or in a parameter, this is the data type that you will need. With the storage account, there might be something if I'll search, but yes, not on a very high level. I may have to create a very complex. Yeah. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of Boolean. Yeah, there are certain things, but as you can see, these are very, very detailed advanced level of storage account properties. For example, yeah, whatever. So I don't really want to get into these properties as of now. But yes, if you want to create them, you can create using, I mean, you can define it like a variable or parameter if you want to. Otherwise, you can anytime you can hard code it, and so that make it like a default thing whenever someone creates it. So they don't have any option to provide that particular thing in a different way. Okay, so the next type after integer, I will go ahead and see which one I want to. Yeah, so Boolean. The next type is Boolean. So Boolean is like, true and false. Similarly, you can have it like parameter. So suppose you want to create a parameter, and my storage access. I think there is something called public access, and I will call it like pub Boolean. And I want to, by default, it will be false. But if someone wants to expose this, it will be true. And then here, what I will do, I think should be part of properties, and then I should be allow public access, and I will say my storage access, and that should be whatever is defined. By default it is false. So if you will create a public account using this template, by default it will be false, so nobody can access the blob publicly. But if someone who is deploying it wants to make a difference, then using a parameter using CLI or parameter file, they can define it like a true, and then it will be set it like true, and then they can the storage account will be accessible over public, which is not recommended, but still it depends on your use case. So that's how you can use your Boolean. Now Boolean data type, of course, this can be also created like a variable. So I can define it like var I will say Boolean var is equals to true. I mean, it can be a meaningful variable as well, but here I'm just making it up. So just the point is to explain you whatever the data type you are doing with the parameter, you can do with the variable as well. Essentially, you just have to you don't have to explicitly tell the type. This is one of the difference in terms of discussion that we are having. There is another difference, but we will go through again. I have to explain it because that's a very, very important discussion that you might be having in your mind, that why we have these two things to do the similar stuff, because there is a reason behind it. Okay, so this is Boolean. Now the next thing is something that will help you to do anything where you have your own structure in your mind in terms of parameter or variable, and you want to have this level of structure. So for example, here for storage we have these different parameters. However, you may want to do everything in one object so that it is well encapsulated in a way, and you don't really have multiple parameters. That is possible, and the same goes with the variable as well. So I will give an example of parameter here. So suppose I am saying parameter my storage object, you can name it like whatever you want, obj or whatever, but you have to tell if you are creating a web parameter that it is an object, and then you say like this, and then within this curly braces you can define the object properties. So for example, the first thing I want to define is name. So name will be whatever. Similarly, I want to define the location, because, and then I can define it like this, and then I want to define the SKU, whatever I need for a storage, and then I want to define a access. I mean, I will just sort it like, yeah, and then I can actually get rid of all these 4 parameters. So everything is encapsulated within this simple object, and now I want to use this. Then all I have to do, of course I have to provide these values in the same schema, but all I have to do is, and we will get into the uses when so right now the discussion is revolving around data type, so I will not really get into the uses part, which is more or less discussion of how to use the parameter or how to use the variable from when you are deploying it. We will get into that, but that's a different discussion altogether. So here what I will do is my storage object dot name, so it will pick the name. Similarly, my storage object dot location, same way for SKU. So this way, if you see, you are able to see a little bit of more context. My storage dot access, so you are able to see the context here, that this is the object we are using and this is the object being used for all the storage related properties. So it depends upon how you want to kind of how you want to use these different data types, but essentially these are some of the most common and basic data types that you will use if you are opening any existing Bicep file, or if you are creating a Bicep file to deploy resources in real world scenario. Then these are some of the basic data types that you will come across. Of course, there are some variation about string, so multi-line string, then escape characters. Those things are also very, very important, but from my point of view, those are needed when you really need in a very specific use case, and those are something that we will discuss as we progress forward. So our discussion is more about when you are getting started, these are the most basic things that you will definitely have to have in your mind, and if you know these, then all those further concepts you will be able to navigate through yourself, or we will get into those things as we progress. So we will definitely cover how to use these parameters in a parameter file, how to define the object, how to define the different things, how to decide which one should go to parameter and which one should go to variable, and how to make that decision happen, and then use this in a very scalable way. And then further, there are a lot of things then when you start creating this on a scale. And of course, this is just lesson 5 here, session 5. There are like 16-17 lessons that we have planned for this particular session, for this particular training. So yeah, a lot of things are coming up next, how to create modules, CI/CD, XYZ things, all revolving around Azure Bicep. This is it for today. Let me know if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, or if you want me to cover something very specific when it is about Azure Bicep. I'll see if I have already covered it in my course curriculum that is planned in upcoming sessions. If not, then I will try to see if I can cover those things that you request. But yes, stay tuned and let me know your feedback in comment section. Thank you. Have a good day. Good night. Take care, everyone.